Get out of your apartment within 48 hours. My mother said it with a beaming smile. She said it with the same lightness as if she were announcing the dinner menu. The words were spoken in the middle of the chaos of our family reunion, where all our relatives gathered once a year, and they were neither a joke nor a metaphor. Until a few hours before hearing those words, the reunion was supposed to be as peaceful as always. It was at my uncle's vast backyard. There were the smell of grass, the savory smoke of hamburgers grilling on the barbecue, and the constant laughter of my relatives. But to me, that clamor always felt like something happening on the other side of a pane of glass. As an analyst at the State Department, it is my daily routine to read people's true intentions from their expressions and tone of voice. And this place was a treasure trove of fake smiles and true feelings. Ava! The one who called me with a big smile was my mother. Her voice sounded as if it carried pure affection with no hidden meaning, at least to any untrained ear. I walked toward her with a plastic cup filled with iced tea in my hand. I need to talk to you. She gently took my arm and pulled me a little away from the crowd. Her expression was as if she were about to reveal some wonderful surprise. It's about Zoe and Tyler. The thing is, they seem to be looking for an apartment to start their new life. Almost overlapping with her words, a particularly loud voice from Zoe echoed from a nearby group of relatives. It sounded almost like background music prepared for this very conversation. So Tyler got another promotion, and now he has more social obligations. And this watch is a necessary expense for building relationships with clients. Zoe was flaunting the luxury watch on her wrist as if to show it off. It's different for me than it is for Ava. We always have to aim higher, so the stress is intense. That's why we need a home where we can truly relax. Her words were clearly directed at me. In her logic, her success and stress were more valuable and deserving of priority than my stability and peace. As if she had been waiting for that cue, my mother tightened her grip on my arm and said, "So, I have a favor to ask. Please move out of your apartment within 48 hours. For a moment, I couldn't understand what she meant. The noise in the backyard faded, and only her smiling face burned into my eyes in slow motion. What? What do you mean? Because Zoe and Tyler need the apartment. It's spacious and in the perfect location, isn't it? She said it as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. At that moment, Zoe interrupted our conversation with a tablet in her hand. Her face was shining like a child talking about her dream home. Look, Ava, this is the new layout. Zoe proudly held the tablet screen up for me to see. Displayed on it was a detailed 3D renovation image of my apartment. The walls had been removed, and unfamiliar modern furniture was arranged. This is my apartment. Why do you even have this? Zoe answered without the slightest hint of guilt. I measured everything the last time I visited. If we take down this wall, the main bedroom will be so much bigger. I already contacted the contractor. As soon as you move out, we can start construction. At those words, I felt something snap inside my head. It went beyond anger. I felt a kind of chill run through me. Wait. Hold on. I never said I was moving out. And that is my home. How can you plan everything on your own and then tell me to get out? Are you out of your mind? Both my mother and Zoe exchanged glances, looking genuinely shocked by my words. Mom furrowed her brows like a tragic heroine. You've always been like this, Ava. Always thinking only about yourself. When the family is struggling, why can't you show a little compassion? You have no idea how worried we are about Zoe. Then, Tyler, who had been silent until then, stepped in as if to calm things down. He placed a hand on Zoe's shoulder and looked at me with a sympathetic expression. Ava, calm down. We don't want to cause you trouble. But honestly, our current house is really cramped, and Zoe is under a lot of stress. We're family, so isn't it natural to help the ones who are having the hardest time? It might be a small inconvenience for you, but for us, this is the start of a new life. Those seemingly reasonable words irritated me more than anything. They were all trying to paint me as the heartless, selfish villain. Then, my father, who had been standing with his arms crossed, finally spoke up in a tone meant to sound gentle and instructive. Ava, Tyler is right. Zoe and Tyler are struggling. As their family, you should cooperate at least a little. That single sentence made it clear that this plan wasn't just my mother and Zoe's doing. It had the full support of both of my parents. And then my mother spoke, as if she were scolding a disobedient child. Zoe and Tyler are starting a new life. As a family, helping each other is only natural, isn't it? Helping each other and kicking someone out of their home without discussion are completely different things. My voice grew a little louder. Relatives around us began glancing over, wondering what was happening. Don't be dramatic, Zoe laughed through her nose. You're single, so a smaller apartment would be more than enough for you. My mother nodded vigorously at Zoe's words and added her own blow. Exactly. And Ava, with your job, your company can easily find you another place, right? The benefits are good, aren't they? All thanks to our precious taxpayer money. There wasn't a shred of gratitude in her words, only a warped sense of entitlement, believing that public servants whose salaries came from their taxes should naturally bend to their convenience. And then Zoe delivered the final blow. Besides, you're a government employee, so you get to leave work on time anyway. You have plenty of time to pack for a move, don't you? Her insensitive assumption left me speechless. There was no point in continuing the conversation. In their minds, everything had already been decided. I shook my head and stepped away from the two of them. Enough, this is pointless. Oh, where are you going? We're not finished. Ignoring my mother's voice behind me, I walked through the noise of the party and headed toward my car. They didn't know. They never even tried to know what kind of work I actually did. Washington, D.C., Embassy Row. The apartment I lived in was a protected residence for diplomats under the jurisdiction of the State Department. As a senior cybersecurity analyst responsible for safeguarding national classified information, I held the highest security clearance, TSSCI. This apartment was a fortress designed to protect personnel with that level of clearance. Numerous discreet surveillance cameras, security guards constantly patrolling the area, and a security gate that strictly screened all visitors. This was not just an apartment. It was a facility under strict government control. Their misunderstanding wasn't just ignorance. It was a deliberate distortion of reality that they themselves had been constructing for many years. There was a time when I tried to share my world with them. When I told my mother that I was studying cyber intelligence in graduate school, she only said, "Well, I don't really understand difficult things like that, but make sure you don't wait too long to get married." Zoe openly laughed through her nose and said, "Is doing that nerdy stuff actually fun for you?" In the value system they used to measure people, my passion and my career were things too meaningless to even register. For them, success meant finding a wealthy husband like Zoe did and posting impressive-looking photos of their lives on social media. That was all. So they shoved my job into a vague category of something government-related. By doing so, they could shrink a daughter they couldn't understand into something small enough for them to feel comfortable with, something they believed they could control. Through that warped filter, it was obvious how my apartment looked to them. They never imagined it was something I had earned through backbreaking effort and brutal competition. To them, it was simply a lucky bonus handed out because I was a government employee. I had heard my mother tell our relatives many times, "The benefits she gets are amazing." Behind those words was a hidden contempt, the assumption that none of it came from my own ability. Our tax money pays for it. That cliche was the pinnacle of their twisted thinking. It was as if they were the patrons and I was some freeloader bathing in their generosity. So at some point, I gave up trying to explain. My silence was interpreted as a convenient agreement on their part. But the reality was entirely different. Back in my room, I retrieved a thick file from the safe hidden deep in my closet. On the cover were the words, "Diplomatic Housing Contract." I opened it and reread the section concerning residency regulations. Its contents were strict, allowing absolutely no exceptions. Any individual seeking residence in this facility must pass the federal background check process, which requires a minimum of 8 to 12 weeks, and must obtain residence approval. This includes a comprehensive investigation of financial records, criminal history, and personal associations. In other words, no matter how much I wanted, it was legally impossible to let my family live here. Zoe's 3D renovation plan was nothing more than a child's drawing in the face of federal law. As I continued reading, a decisive sentence confirming my memory jumped out at me. Any unauthorized attempt to enter or reside in this facility shall be considered a federal offense under Title 18 of the United States Code and may result in up to 5 years of imprisonment, a fine or both. After reading that sentence, I sank deep into the sofa and began to think about what I should do next. How could I make Zoe or my mother give up on this reckless move? If I took photos of this contract and sent them to the family group chat, perhaps their absurd plan would finally stop. Should I calmly tell them, "I'm sorry, but legally, I cannot give up this apartment"? If I explained this harsh reality, would they understand? Or would they only blame me? I couldn't organize my thoughts. Without any clear answer, I went to sleep that night with a heavy heart. And the next morning, completely unaware of how much this had been weighing on me, my mother's call rang loudly through my phone. When I pressed the answer button, the noise on the other end was unusually loud, as if the phone were on speaker. "Hello, Ava. Zoe is here too." My mother's cheerful voice came through. "So, have you started packing for the move?" Before I could say anything, Zoe's irritated voice cut in. "We already paid the deposit to the movers. We're moving first thing the day after tomorrow, so be ready." At those words, all the hesitation I felt last night instantly turned into anger. "Wait, what do you mean? I haven't given permission for anything. Why are you making plans without me?" I could hear my mother sigh deeply on the other end, as if she were truly exasperated. "Oh, don't be dramatic. We don't need your permission. We talked with your father, and this is already a decision made by our family. All right?" Beep, beep, beep. The call was cut off abruptly. Listening to that cold, mechanical sound, I slowly lowered my phone. I felt ridiculous for ever worrying. Dialogue? Understanding? Those things had never existed from the start. They never intended to respect my wishes. Fine. Whatever happens now is not my problem. I quietly opened my laptop. I accessed the State Department's secure internal network and calmly began typing into the Diplomatic Security Service Incident Report form. Subject: Report of an attempted unauthorized civilian occupation of a protected residence facility, Embassy Row District. In the body, I wrote the series of events without personal emotion and added that they were likely planning an intrusion with a specific date and time. This was no longer a family dispute. It was a clear threat to a facility tied to national security. A few hours after I clicked the send button, my direct internal phone line rang. The display showed the name of my supervisor, Ryan, who was also the deputy director of the Diplomatic Security Service. "Ava, I read your report." His voice was as calm as always, but beneath it, a sharp tension was present. "This is not a joke, is it?" "Unfortunately, no." "I see." After a brief silence, Ryan spoke. "I'm sorry that your family is involved, but we will handle this according to protocol. Your apartment is a level 4 protected facility. Unauthorized entry, under any circumstance, is not permitted. We will increase security and be fully prepared on the day. You should focus on your duties as usual, without worrying about anything." His words loosened the tension that had been winding tightly inside me. "Thank you, Ryan." When the call ended, I did not feel relieved. Instead, a cold reality settled heavily in my chest. I could no longer turn back. Even so, I had powerful allies on my side: the law and the organization. That fact was both my only comfort in this situation and something unbearably sad. Because somewhere inside, I had still hoped for one thing: that my mother or Zoe would, at some point, realize they had gone too far. Just one phone call would have been enough. "I'm sorry, I should have been more rational." A single sentence like that was something I secretly longed for. But they crossed that final line without even a moment's hesitation. My last remaining hope had been completely severed by the phone call that morning. So this was no longer an action taken to punish them. It was the only way left to prevent them from hurting me any further, the only way to protect myself. The hours that followed felt like the calm before a storm. All I could do was quietly wait for what was bound to happen in order to protect my life, my heart, and my right to exist here. And then, on the morning of the destined day, I stood there, having steeled myself, staring out the window. Washington, D.C. was wrapped in a quiet stillness that came before the government machinery began to move for the day. I was in my home workspace, monitoring suspicious access attempts from foreign networks, just as I always did. Outside the window, birds were chirping, and the morning light was beginning to illuminate the tree-lined street of Embassy Row. It was an almost absurdly peaceful scene. At exactly 9 a.m., A pop-up appeared on my desk monitor, live footage from the surveillance cameras installed around the perimeter of the building. They had arrived. I stepped away from my main workstation and walked toward the large bay window in the corner of the room. This room, which served as my home office, was the perfect vantage point. It looked straight down at the main entrance of the building. Through the thick bulletproof glass, I could see a familiar minivan and a moving truck with a massive company logo pulling up. I returned to my desk and put on my headset. Audio from the directional microphones installed at the gate streamed clearly into my ears. With this setup, I could grasp not only their expressions, but practically their breathing as well. I stood at the window again, arms crossed, as if I were watching a stage play from the best seat in the house. From the minivan emerged Zoe and Tyler, both barely able to hide their excitement, and my mother, who walked with the posture of someone directing the entire operation. They marched confidently toward the building's main gate, as if it already belonged to them. But just a few meters before reaching it, they were stopped. Two heavily armed security officers, more heavily equipped than anything I had ever seen on this property, stood firm and unyielding in front of the gate. From my headset came the low, steady, yet sharply projecting voice of one of the guards. "Excuse me, may I ask who you are?" My mother stepped forward to answer on behalf of the group. "Hello, we are moving into our daughter's apartment." The security guard glanced down at the tablet in his hand and immediately looked back up. His expression did not change at all. "Mr. and Mrs. Clark, you are not in our records. Entry into this building requires an official authorization pass issued by the Department of State. Do you have such documentation?" "Authorization pass? Our daughter Ava lives here. Hasn't she told you anything?" Irritation began to seep into my mother's voice. "Miss Ava Clark is currently on duty, and she has submitted no advance notice of visitors arriving today." At that moment, the second security guard spoke, delivering an even more decisive statement. "Please understand, this building is a protected residence for diplomatic personnel. Any unauthorized attempt to enter or reside within the facility is strictly prohibited by federal law. Further approach will be regarded as unlawful entry." "Unlawful entry?" My mother's shrill voice echoed across the quiet morning of Embassy Row. "Don't be ridiculous. This is my daughter's apartment. Do you have any idea who we are?" Her screaming did nothing to move the guards' expressions. They were professionals. They were not swayed by emotion, nor threatened by shouting. Their sole purpose was to protect this sanctuary, according to protocol. Zoe stood frozen with a look of disbelief, and Tyler awkwardly averted his gaze. The movers watched the bizarre scene from inside the truck's cabin, unsure what to do. "It is the regulation." The guard repeated their statement, calm but unwavering. "Without formal authorization from the resident, Miss Ava Clark, we cannot allow you to enter the premises. Please leave." His words made it clear that the barrier they were trying to force their way through was not something a daughter's persuasion could move, but something far larger and colder. They could do nothing but stand before the invisible, yet absolute boundary drawn around the property. As expected, only seconds later, my smartphone vibrated violently. It was my mother. I removed my headset and pressed the answer button. "What is going on, Ava? Why won't they let us in? Tell the guards to let us through." Watching her panicking outside the window, I spoke quietly. "I can't do that. This isn't an ordinary apartment. It's a protected facility under federal jurisdiction." "A protected facility?" "And this whole incident today, including your attempt to force your way in, I intend to report all of it as an official incident to the Diplomatic Security Service at the State Department." I could hear her furious voice shift into confusion and fear. "State Department? Diplomatic Security Service? What are you talking about? None of this makes any sense." Her panic did nothing to affect my tone. I continued, calm and resolute. This was my final warning. It's my duty. My job is to protect this facility and the classified national information inside it. Today, you attempted, deliberately and repeatedly, despite multiple warnings, to illegally enter a federally protected site. This isn't a family matter anymore. If I fail to report this to the proper authorities, I'll be the one punished for dereliction of duty and breaching security protocols. What you're asking of me is the same as telling me to throw away my career and my future." My steady explanation did not reach her at all. Instead, her voice turned into a hysterical scream on the other end of the line. Duty? Career? Are you saying that your ridiculous job is more important than your mother and your sister? We only wanted to borrow your home for a bit. How does that become a national issue? It's because you're doing some weird job. Her words were filled with blame and victimhood. The sheer irrationality of it froze my heart completely. It's too late. Everything that's happening is a result of your own actions. How dare you? At my cold dismissal, she finally let out a piercing scream. You're treating us like terrorists. Are you really going to turn your own family into criminals? I cut off her desperate resistance. There's nothing more to discuss. I tapped the end call icon quietly. Then I returned to my work. Whatever happened to them from here on was no longer my concern. That afternoon, I compiled this incident as attempted unauthorized entry into a protected facility and submitted the formal incident report to the Diplomatic Security Service. The detailed report, complete with photos, was immediately accepted and archived in the official records. That night, my phone rang again. This time, it was my father. His voice was more confused than I had ever heard it. Ava, what on earth is going on? I just called the company that supposedly manages your apartment, and… The management company? I asked calmly. Yes, but all they said was, we cannot provide any information. And then they said something absurd like, all matters must be handled through the housing office of the Department of State. The Department of State? Where exactly are you working? At his words, I responded quietly, that is the real nature of my job and my home, the part you all refuse to listen to. The moment he realized that the word Department of State, something he only ever heard on the news, was directly connected to his own life, he drew in a sharp breath. The anger vanished from his tone, replaced by confusion and fear. For the first time, my family was forced to confront the truth, that the opponent they had been fighting was not a difficult second daughter, but the United States federal government, which does not bend to personal feelings. I explained, within the limits of security protocol, the importance of my work and the special nature of my residence. That the daughter they had long assumed was a plain government employee actually worked on the front lines of national intelligence. That the home Zoe and Tyler tried to seize was a facility protected under federal law. All of it shook his sense of reality, and after understanding the gravity of the situation, he stopped contacting me altogether. But for my mother and Zoe, the truth was irrelevant. Only the anger of having their plan ruined mattered. That anger turned into relentless phone calls, but I refused to answer any of them. When they realized I would not pick up, my phone erupted with furious text messages. How could you do this to us? How dare you treat your family like criminals? Raising you was a mistake. But strangely, their hysterical messages did not hurt me. If anything, I felt as though I were being freed from an invisible curse that had bound me for years. Zoe sent only one message. Because of you, Tyler's company has flagged his background check. I thought it was nothing but the consequences of her own actions. My father simply stayed silent. In his own way, he must have realized the enormity of his mistake. But his silence was not enough to stop my mother and Zoe. They would never back down on their own, and I became certain that if things continued like this, my mental health would deteriorate. So I contacted a lawyer, explained everything calmly, and asked them to file for a restraining order prohibiting Zoe, Tyler, and my parents from approaching my apartment, my workplace, or contacting me in any form. After finishing the call with my lawyer, I blocked all of their contacts without hesitation. That was the final boundary drawn between me and my family. From that moment on, my relationship with them was completely severed. No, perhaps it had never truly existed in the first place. It had only been a fragile illusion of connection that barely held together. I had protected both my federally safeguarded sanctuary and the boundary of my own heart. What happened to them afterward was something I later heard from my aunt. The incident report filed with the Diplomatic Security Service became a digital tattoo engraved on Zoe and Tyler's lives, one they never could have imagined. The record of attempted unauthorized entry into a federal facility completely shut down the path to further promotions Tyler had been aiming for. Their lives, which had been coated in vanity and pretense, slowly had their glitter peel away under the collapse of their social credibility. My parents, too, paid their price. Their proud daughter's plan had collapsed, and they were issued a restraining order by their other daughter. Within the family, their failures, and my supposed coldness, became prime gossip material. and my parents lost all standing. Now, I heard they are treated like fragile, untouchable objects among relatives, living with a constant sense of shame. Meanwhile, in my heavily secured home in Embassy Row, I devoted myself to my duties. Just beyond a single wall, an invisible war of intelligence, shaping the fate of nations, unfolded every day. I would never return to that noisy family reunion again, and that is fine. In the quiet I finally earned, I can focus entirely on my life and my work, with a clarity that comes from the depths of my heart. It is a freedom more valuable than anything else.